Princess Zara of the Talarians wept as Max the human dog ripped out the throats of the 3 Krell assassins sent to kill her, alien blood pooling around her dainty feet as the German Shepherd stood protectively in front of its wounded master. On the bustling spaceport of New Seattle on Earth, Jerry Burns winced as he pressed a hand to the plasma wound on his side, leaning heavily against a supply crate for support. The grizzled ex-Marine had seen his share of combat during the frontier wars, but nothing could have prepared him for an ambush by the reptilian Krell in the middle of a crowded hangar bay. His loyal companion Max, a retired military dog, had reacted with lightning speed, taking down the would-be assassins before they could finish the job. Jerry's mind raced as he tried to make sense of the situation. Just hours earlier, he'd been approached by Xanth, a wealthy Talarian merchant with a lucrative job offer, escort his daughter, Princess Zara, to a crucial peace summit on Talaria Prime. The Talarians were on the brink of war with the Krell, and Zara's presence was essential to prevent bloodshed. Despite his reservations about working for aliens, Jerry had accepted the job, seeing it as a chance to pay off his debts and secure a better future for his teenage son Luke. Now as he watched Zara tremble in fear, her elegant robes stained with the blood of her attackers, Jerry realized the gravity of the situation. The Krell were determined to sabotage the peace talks, and they wouldn't stop until Zara was dead. Failure wasn't an option. If he couldn't get the princess to the summit in time, millions of lives would be lost in a devastating interstellar war. Gritting his teeth against the pain, Jerry pushed himself upright and limped towards Zara, Max trailing close behind. "We need to get you out of here, Your Highness," he said, his voice rough with urgency. "There could be more of them coming." Zara looked up at him with tear-filled eyes, her delicate features etched with fear and desperation. "Please," she whispered, "you must help me. The fate of my people rests in your hands." As Jerry helped the princess to her feet, he couldn't shake the feeling that this mission would be the most dangerous and important of his life. With Max by his side and a fierce determination burning in his heart, he vowed to do whatever it took to keep Zara safe and prevent the galaxy from descending into chaos. The fate of billions now depended on a battle-scarred human, his loyal dog, and a fragile alien princess. Jerry's blood ran cold as the ship shuddered violently, jolted out of hyperspace by the sudden appearance of a massive Krell warship. The reptilian aliens hailed them, their harsh voices crackling over the comm system. "Talarian vessel, this is Commander Zorgax of the Krell Empire. We know you have Princess Zara aboard. Hand her over immediately or face destruction." Xanth's face hardened as he replied, "I will not comply with your demands. The princess is under my protection." The Krell commander hissed in anger. "Then you have sealed your fate. Prepare to be boarded." Jerry sprinted to the ship's weapons console, his fingers flying over the controls as he powered up the defensive systems. Max stood beside him, hackles raised and teeth bared at the view screen displaying the approaching Krell ship. The space battle was fierce and unrelenting. The Krell's superior firepower pummeled their shields, the deck shuddering beneath Jerry's feet with each impact. He gritted his teeth, focusing on the targeting system as he returned fire. Max barked furiously, as if trying to intimidate the enemy through sheer force of will. Despite being outmatched, Jerry's combat instincts kicked in. He relied on his experience from the frontier wars, outmaneuvering the bulky Krell vessel with deft precision. His well-placed shots struck critical systems, causing explosions to blossom along the enemy ship's hull. Seizing the opportunity, Jerry yelled to Xanth, "Now jump to hyperspace." The stars stretched into lines as they made their escape, but their relief was short-lived. Warning lights flashed across the console, indicating heavy damage to their ship. Jerry's heart sank as he realized they wouldn't make it to Talaria Prime without repairs. "We need to set down somewhere," Xanth said, his voice strained. "There's an uninhabited planet nearby. It's our best chance." As they limped towards the planet, Jerry's thoughts turned to Princess Zara. He found her in the passenger compartment, her face pale and her breathing shallow. Blood seeped through her robes from a wound she'd sustained during the battle. Jerry's field medic training took over. He carefully tended to her injury, cleaning and dressing the wound with the limited supplies on hand. Zara watched him work, her eyes filled with a mix of pain and curiosity. "You're not like other humans I've met," she said softly. "You fight with the ferocity of a Krell, yet you show compassion like a Talarian." Jerry met her gaze, surprised by the grudging respect he saw there. "I'm just doing my job, Your Highness. I made a promise to keep you safe, and I intend to keep it." They landed on the planet's surface, the ship groaning under the strain. While Xanth assessed the damage, Jerry and Max ventured out to scout the area. The landscape was rugged and inhospitable, with jagged rock formations and a thin, unbreathable atmosphere. As they made their way back to the ship, Jerry's heart stopped. There, in the distance, was a Krell landing craft. The assassins had followed them, determined to finish what they'd started. Jerry's grip tightened on his blaster as he turned to Max. "Looks like we've got company, boy. We need to protect the princess and buy Xanth some time to get the ship fixed." Max growled in response, ready to face the incoming threat. They took up defensive positions around the ship, preparing for a desperate battle against the Krell assassins. Stranded on an alien world with limited resources and no backup, Jerry knew their survival hinged on his skills and Max's unwavering loyalty. The fate of the princess, the peace summit, and countless lives across the galaxy now rested in the hands of a battle-hardened human and his faithful dog. As the first Krell assassin came into view, Jerry steeled himself for the fight of his life. As the twin suns dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of crimson and violet, Jerry set about constructing a makeshift camp. He gathered what supplies he could from the damaged ship, fashioning a rudimentary shelter from the alien landscape. Max, ever vigilant, patrolled the perimeter, his keen senses alert for any sign of danger. Inside the shelter, Princess Zara sat, her delicate features illuminated by the soft glow of a portable light. She watched Jerry work, curiosity and fatigue warring in her eyes. "Tell me about your world," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What is Earth like?" Jerry paused, surprised by her interest. He'd never been one for small talk, especially with aliens, but something in Zara's tone compelled him to respond. "It's a beautiful place," he said, settling down beside her. "Blue skies, green forests, and oceans that stretch as far as the eye can see. But it's not perfect. We've had our share of wars and conflicts." Zara nodded, her gaze distant. "I understand. My people have been at war with the Krell for generations. It's all I've ever known." She looked up at him, her eyes searching. "What was it like being a soldier, fighting for your people?" Jerry's jaw tightened as memories of the frontier wars flooded back. The screams of the dying, the acrid smell of plasma fire, the weight of loss that never truly left him. "It was hell," he said, his voice raw. "I lost a lot of good friends out there. People I cared about, but I did it because I believed in what we were fighting for, a better future for our children." Zara's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I want that too," she whispered, "a future without war, without bloodshed. But sometimes I wonder if I'm strong enough to make it happen, if I can be the leader my people need." Jerry reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're stronger than you think, Princess. You've already shown more courage than most people I know, and you're not alone in this. You have your father, your people, and—" He hesitated, surprised by the words that sprang to his lips. "And you have me and Max. We'll get you to that peace summit, no matter what it takes." Zara smiled, a genuine warmth in her eyes. "Thank you, Jerry, Her words were cut off by a low growl from Max. The dog's hackles were raised, his teeth bared at the darkness beyond the camp. Jerry was on his feet in an instant, pulse rifle in hand. "Stay here," he ordered Zara, moving to take up a defensive position. The night erupted in a hail of plasma fire as the Krell assassins emerged from the shadows. Jerry returned fire, his rifle spitting deadly bolts of energy into the darkness. Max herded Zara behind the shelter, placing his own body between her and the incoming fire. Jerry's mind raced as he fought, drawing on every trick and tactic he'd learned in the frontier wars. He used the rocky terrain to his advantage, darting from cover to cover, making the Krell work for every shot. But there were too many of them, and they were closing in fast. Just as he was about to be overwhelmed, a blinding flash of light lit up the battlefield. Xanth stood at the entrance to the ship, a massive Talarian plasma cannon in his hands. The weapon roared, sending a searing bolt of energy into the heart of the Krell formation. The assassins scattered, their advance faltering under the onslaught. Together, Jerry and Xanth pushed forward, their weapons spitting fire into the night. The Krell fell back, their numbers thinning with each passing moment, but just as victory seemed within reach, a searing pain exploded in Jerry's shoulder. He stumbled, his rifle falling from nerveless fingers. As Xanth dragged him back to the shelter, Jerry's vision swam. He saw Princess Zara's face above him, her eyes wide with concern and gratitude. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You saved us all." Jerry managed a weak smile, even as the pain threatened to drag him into unconsciousness. "It's what I do, Princess, it's what I—" His words trailed off as the darkness claimed him, the fate of the galaxy still hanging in the balance. Consciousness returned to Jerry slowly. The throbbing pain in his shoulder, a stark reminder of the battle they'd just survived. He blinked, his vision clearing to reveal the concerned faces of Xanth and Princess Zara hovering over him. Max whined softly, nuzzling his hand in a gesture of comfort. "We need to move," Xanth said, his voice tight with urgency. "The repairs are complete, and we can't afford to linger here any longer." Jerry nodded, gritting his teeth as he pushed himself upright. The wound had been cleaned and dressed, but it still burned with every movement. He could feel Zara's eyes on him, a mix of worry and respect in her gaze. They boarded the ship, Xanth taking the controls as Jerry manned the weapons station. Max settled in next to Zara, his presence a reassuring constant in the face of the unknown dangers ahead. The jump to hyperspace was tense, each of them acutely aware of the high stakes at play. As they approached Talaria Prime, the ship shuddered, the unmistakable sound of plasma fire echoing through the hull. Jerry's heart sank as they dropped out of hyperspace, the view screen filled with the chaos of a massive space battle. Talarian and Krell ships clashed in a deadly dance, the void lit up by the flashes of weapons fire and the explosions of destroyed vessels. "It's a trap," Xanth hissed, his hands flying over the controls. The peace summit was never meant to happen. The Krell used it as a diversion to launch a full-scale invasion. Jerry's mind raced, his instincts honed by years of combat kicking into high gear. He targeted the nearest Krell fighter, his shots precise and deadly. The enemy ship exploded in a brilliant burst of flame, but there were dozens more to take its place. They wove through the battlefield, dodging debris and incoming fire. Jerry's focus narrowed to the task at hand, his fingers moving over the weapons controls with a speed and precision born of desperation. Max pressed close to Zara, sensing her fear and offering what comfort he could. The princess clung to the dog, her eyes wide as she watched the destruction unfold around them. Suddenly, Jerry spotted a massive Krell flagship, its weapons trained on the Talarian royal palace. He knew with a sinking certainty that Zara's family was in mortal danger. "We have to stop that ship," he yelled over the din of battle. "If it destroys the palace, the Talarian government will collapse." Xanth hesitated, his gaze flicking to Zara. "We can't risk the princess. Our mission is to get her to safety." Jerry met Zara's eyes, seeing the conflict and determination warring within her. "Your Highness, I swear on my life that I will protect you, but we have to act now, or your people will fall." Zara straightened, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "Do it, we cannot let the Krell win." Xanth's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "I'll get you as close as I can, but you'll be on your own once you're aboard that ship." Jerry and Max prepared to depart, checking their weapons and armor. The ship shuddered as Xanth brought them in close, dodging the flagship's defenses with expert skill. "May the gods be with you," Zara whispered as Jerry and Max stepped into the airlock. Max barked softly, nudged her hand in a final gesture of reassurance. Jerry's muscles tensed as they left the airlock, the gravity of the situation settling into his bones. Max stuck close to his side, moving over the surface of the flagship with magnetic grips on his paws. They cut a hole into the ship's hull and made their way inside, ready to face whatever horrors the Krell had in store. The corridors of the Krell ship were dark and oppressive, the air thick with the stench of death and decay. Jerry and Max moved cautiously, their senses on high alert for any sign of the enemy. They didn't have to wait long. A group of heavily armed Krell soldiers emerged from the shadows, their weapons trained on the intruders. Jerry reacted instantly, diving for cover as plasma bolts sizzled through the air. Max lunged forward, his teeth bared in a snarl of pure fury. He slammed into the nearest soldier, knocking the Krell off balance and giving Jerry an opening to fire. The Krell fell, his lifeless body crumpling to the ground. Jerry and Max fought their way through the ship, facing wave after wave of Krell defenders. Security drones joined the fray, their mechanical limbs armed with deadly cutting lasers. Jerry took them out with well-placed shots, while Max used his speed and agility to avoid their attacks. Finally they reached the bridge. The doors hissed open to reveal the Krell commander, a massive reptilian creature with cold, calculating eyes. He turned to face them, a cruel smile twisting his lips. "You're too late, human," he hissed. "The Talarian royal family will be nothing but ash and dust by the time you—" His words were cut off as Max lunged, his teeth sinking into the commander's throat. The Krell thrashed, his claws raking across Max's flank, but the dog held on with grim determination. Jerry joined the fray, his fists and feet striking with brutal efficiency. Together they brought the commander down, his lifeless body slumping to the floor. Breathing hard, Jerry rushed to the weapons console, his fingers flying over the controls as he worked to disable the ship's defenses. Max limped to his side, blood matting his fur, but his eyes still bright with fierce loyalty. Suddenly an alarm blared through the ship. Jerry's heart stopped as he read the message flashing across the screen. Self-destruct sequence initiated. 5 minutes until detonation. He looked at Max, a cold realization settling in his gut. The Krell had set a trap within a trap, ensuring that even in defeat they would strike a crippling blow to the Talarians. "We have to go," he said, his voice raw with urgency. "If this ship explodes, it'll take out the entire palace and everyone in it." Max whined, his body tensing with pain and exhaustion. But he followed as Jerry raced back through the ship, desperation lending speed to their steps. They had minutes, perhaps less, to escape the doomed vessel and warn Xanth and Zara of the impending danger. The fate of an entire world hung in the balance, and failure was not an option. As they ran, Jerry's thoughts turned to his son Luke waiting for him back on Earth. He'd promised to return, to build a better life for them both. But now, as the seconds ticked down and the spectre of death loomed large, he knew that promise might be one he couldn't keep. He pushed the thought aside, focusing on the mission at hand. He had a job to do, and he would see it through to the end, no matter the cost. The ship shuddered around them, the first tremors of the self-destruct sequence ripping through the hull. Jerry and Max redoubled their efforts, racing against the clock as the countdown to destruction continued. They burst into the hangar bay, the sight of Xanth's ship a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. The airlock opened, Zara's face pale and strained as she watched them approach. Jerry and Max leaped aboard, the ship pulling away from the flagship with barely a second to spare. The Krell vessel exploded behind them, a blinding flash of light and heat that rocked their ship and sent debris hurtling through space. But even as they escaped the immediate danger, Jerry knew their fight was far from over. The Krell invasion force still swarmed around Talaria Prime, and the fate of Zara's people hung by a thread. He looked at Max, seeing the same determination and loyalty burning in the dog's eyes that had carried them through countless battles before. Together, they would stand against the darkness no matter the odds. For the sake of a princess, a planet, and the future of the galaxy itself, they would fight to their last breath. The battle for Talaria Prime had only just begun, and Jerry and Max would be there to see it through, come what may. Alarms blared through the Krell ship as Jerry and Max sprinted down the shuddering corridors. Explosions rocked the vessel, bulkheads collapsing around them in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. The self-destruct sequence counted down with merciless precision, the harsh robotic voice echoing through the chaos. Jerry's lungs burned, his injured shoulder throbbing with each step. Max ran beside him, the dog's fur matted with blood and sweat. They dodged falling debris, leaping over piles of Krell corpses as they raced against the clock. The escape pods loomed ahead, a row of gleaming silver spheres beckoning them to safety. Jerry slammed his fist against the release button, the pod's hatch hissing open. He shoved Max inside, then clambered in after him, strapping himself into the harness with shaking hands. The pod jettisoned from the ship, the force of the acceleration slamming Jerry back into his seat. Through the viewport, he watched as the Krell flagship tore itself apart, massive chunks of hull plating and engine components spiraling into the void. But their relief was short-lived. As the pod hurtled towards Talaria Prime, Jerry realized with a sinking feeling that the navigation system was damaged. The planet's surface rushed up to meet them, the pod shaking violently as it plunged through the atmosphere. Max whined, pressing close to Jerry's side. The human gripped the harness, his knuckles white as he braced for impact. The pod was heading straight for the heart of the ongoing space battle, the flashes of weapons fire and the wrecks of ships growing larger with each passing second. Suddenly, a sleek Talarian fighter appeared alongside the pod, matching its trajectory. The comm crackled to life, and Princess Zara's voice filled the cabin. "Jerry, it's Zara. I'm here to guide you to safety. Follow my lead." Jerry's heart leaped at the sound of her voice. He watched in awe as Zara piloted the fighter with expert precision, weaving through the debris field and evading the Krell ships that swarmed like angry hornets. The pod shuddered as Zara used her ship's tractor beam to guide it through the chaos, her knowledge of the planet's terrain allowing her to find a safe path. They skimmed over mountain ranges and through narrow canyons, the Krell forces falling behind as they failed to match the princess's skill. At last, they reached the outskirts of the capital city. The pod touched down with a jarring thud, the hatch popping open to reveal a scene of devastation. The once proud Talarian royal palace lay in ruins, its walls crumbled and its towers toppled. Xanth rushed forward, a contingent of battle-weary Talarian soldiers at his back. His face was grim, his eyes haunted by the horrors he had witnessed. "The king is dead," he said, his voice heavy with grief. "Killed in the initial assault." Jerry's heart ached for Zara, knowing the pain of losing a father all too well. He watched as she emerged from her fighter, her regal bearing tinged with sorrow and anger. But even in her grief, Zara stood tall, her eyes blazing with determination. She turned to her people, her voice ringing out across the rubble-strewn courtyard. "My father has fallen, but we will not let his sacrifice be in vain. We will fight back against the Krell and we will reclaim our world. Who will stand with me?" Her roar of approval went up from the gathered soldiers, their weapons raised in defiance. Jerry and Max stepped forward, ready to join the fight. The battle for Talaria Prime raged on, Jerry and Max leading a team of Talarian special forces in surgical strikes against the remaining Krell strongholds. They fought with a savage determination, driven by the memory of those they had lost and the knowledge that failure meant the end of everything they held dear. In the end, it was a Pyrrhic victory. The Krell were driven back, their forces shattered and their ships sent fleeing into the void. But the cost was high. The streets of the capital were choked with the bodies of the fallen Talarian and Krell alike. The planet's infrastructure lay in ruins, its once vibrant cities reduced to smoking rubble. As the dust settled, Zara, now queen of the Talarians, stood before Jerry and Max, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "You have saved my people," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Without you, we would have been lost. We owe you a debt that can never be repaid." Jerry looked out over the war-torn landscape, his heart heavy with the weight of all that had been lost. But as he turned to Max, seeing the unwavering loyalty and love in the dog's eyes, he knew that there was still hope for the future. "We'll help you rebuild," he said, meeting Zara's gaze. "My son will understand. This is where I'm needed now." And so as the sun set over the shattered remains of Talaria Prime, Jerry and Max stood side by side, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For they knew that even in the darkest of times, there was always the promise of a new dawn. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.